These are more solutions to the challenges of labor markets in Nigeria are in the menu of intellectual dinner prepared to be served by the erudite scholar and professor of economics, Professor Abayomi Adebayo, at the 296th Inaugural Lecture at Obafemi Awolowo University, OAU, Oduduwa Hall, Ile-Ife, on Tuesday, the 31st of January 2017, under the distinguished chairmanship of Professor Anthony Elujoba, the acting vice chancellor of Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, Nigeria. The inaugural lecture is titled Navigating the Labyrinth of Contemporary Nigerian Labor Markets. Are there green lights? Time 5 p.m. prompt. Don't forget, all road leads to Oduduwa Hall, OAU, Ile-Ife. You are most welcome to this epoch-making event.
Great Africa's most beautiful campus.
The Nigerian labor market of today is a complex landscape. It is a one-way highway filled with vehicles on both sides, and there are no exits. Are we going to be held in this lockjam forever, or is there a bypass ahead? If there is a bypass, where is it? How far away is it? All these are more solutions to the challenges of modern day labor markets in Nigeria are in the menu of intellectual dinner prepared to be served by the erudite scholar and professor of economics, Professor Abayomi Adebayo, at the 296th Inaugural Lecture at Obafemi Awolowo University, OAU, Oduduwa Hall, Ile-Ife, on Tuesday, the 31st of January 2017, under the distinguished chairmanship of Professor Anthony Elujoba, the acting vice chancellor of Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, Nigeria. The inaugural lecture is titled Navigating the Labyrinth of Contemporary Nigerian Labor Markets. Are there green lights? Time 5 p.m. prompt. Don't forget, all road leads to Oduduwa Hall, OAU, Ile-Ife. You are most welcome to this epoch-making event. The Nigerian labor market of today is a complex landscape. It is a one-way highway filled with vehicles on both sides, and there are no exits. Are we going to be held in this lockjam forever, or is there a bypass ahead? If there is a bypass, where is it? How far away is it? All these are more solutions to the challenges of modern day labor markets in Nigeria are in the menu of intellectual dinner prepared to be served by the erudite scholar and professor of economics, Professor Abayomi Adebayo, at the 296th Inaugural Lecture at Obafemi Awolowo University, OAU, Oduduwa Hall, Ile-Ife, on Tuesday, the 31st of January 2017, under the distinguished chairmanship of Professor Anthony Elujoba, the acting vice chancellor of Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, Nigeria. The inaugural lecture is titled
Navigating the Labyrinth of the Contemporary Labor Market. Are there green lights? Yomi, up to you.
Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is with great honor and deep sense of gratitude to the only wise God that I stand here today to present my inaugural lecture. The lecture is titled Navigating the Labyrinth of the Contemporary Nigerian Labor Market. Are there green lights? The lecture is the 296th inaugural lecture series in this university, and the without reconciliation with the need of the economy. Over the years, my research burden has been on policy direction on these development issues with respect to labor. In the literature, first, presentations are made on perspective on some key labor issues, and second is a synopsis of my contribution on all the issues of labor and development that I have itemized. My few points in this lecture, albeit a bit appeal, is that at about 57 years of continuous self-governance with the application of all kinds of policies and programs. What is apparent is a nation that remains bedeviled with infrastructural deficiency, heavily indebted to other nations, and heavily import dependent. It is a nation where, irrespective of education and qualification, youth remain unemployed for a long time, and where educated youth feel a great relief once they escape to other nations, with their parents celebrating their exit to greener pasture. Some fundamental issues of concern. For the past 18 years of democratic rule, and with series of subsequent reviews of minimum wage between 2000 and 2010, the economy has remained bewildered with more serious and yet unresolved trade disputes and strikes in many sectors of the economy. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, no labor market problem is as important to the individual, to the economy, or to society in general as the determination of workers' pay. This is so because workers' pay set the level of individual earning and to a considerable degree constitute the main element of living standard for families. The experience in Nigeria is that some form of wage negotiation, review, and adjustment were never considered paramount until it degenerated into a situation that threatened the economic progress of the country. Thus, adjustment of wages in reaction to developments in the economy has always been traumatic. Hardly any government administration in Nigeria went without experiencing the wage storm arising from the process of negotiation. For instance, in the last 2 years, most teaching hospitals in Nigeria have hardly worked for 6 consecutive months without any strike, without one strike or the other. Also, the 6-month national strike of ASU in 2013, with all its irrevocable costs on the individuals and the economy, remain fresh in our memory. Apart from this, there are disturbing experiences of most states in the country with regard to the issue of backlog of salary arrears and strikes. It is so bad that on 12th July 2015, it was reported in the Punch that policemen even threatened to boycott governorship election in Kogi and Bayelsa State over the unpaid salary arrears of 13 months. The matters arising from all this are the following. What must we do to move Nigeria out of this mess? How should the wage challenge be handled to position Nigerian workers for productivity and the economy for better macroeconomic performance? Perspectives on workers' pay and productivity. The literature is replete with several perspectives on how workers' wages could be determined for productivity and job satisfaction. The perspectives are both divine and academic in nature. Each perspective is presented as follows. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, on the issue of workers' pay and productivity, it may be instructive to examine the divine perspective and instruction. The Bible states, "You shall not muzzle the ox while it treads out the grain, and the laborer is worthy of his wages." In that generation, captured in the Bible, production technique on farm involved wide use of ox to tread out corn. In this case, the theocratic rule of reward which governed the use of ox was that the beasts that were employed in treading out the corn were allowed to feed while they did the work, so that the more work they did, the more food they had. By implication, the scriptures capture the significance of productivity in connection with reward in that generation. The submission of the Holy Book concerning those who labor in specific tasks and adding definite value can be summarized as follows. Consideration for every form of labor must be governed by justice, fairness, and equity. Exploitation must be avoided, even for beasts, not to talk of human beings. And that it should not be the other way around. That is, the scripture frowns at indolence, laziness, slothfulness in business, and on this it states that if any man will not work, neither should he eat. Therefore, work confers the right to pay, and more work means more pay. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, the economic perspective of productivity, as you will see in the next section of the lecture, is consistent with this divine arrangement. In economics, the major concern and challenge on the issue of labor resource revolves around the process of setting workers' pay or establishing pay structure that justify the value of labor's contribution to value of output to the society. The theory suggests that the economic value of the worker's contribution in production is what normal remuneration or wage rate should be. From economic point of view, the price of labor to employer in return for workers' effort in production is the wage rate. When wage rate has no bearing with productivity, it is simply a wage award, or in economic parlance, transfer payment. To address ability to pay and maintain organizational growth, the response in the absence of increased productivity could be to trim employment and adopt labor-saving devices. However, to avoid unemployment, Oladej in 1994 contended that ability to pay principle should be reviewed to accommodate explicitly ability to produce. In Tobin's view, people who lack ability to earn a decent living need to be helped, but they will not be helped by minimum wage law, trade union wage pressures, or other devices which seek to compel employer to pay them more than their work is worth. The more likely outcome of such regulation is that the intended beneficiary are not employed at all. This is because under a highly centralized collective bargaining, increased wage pressure has potential to generate higher unemployment through reactions such as outsources of some services in attempt to cut costs. The issue is that productivity growth rather than money wage is the main determinant of material well-being and economic growth in the long run. In the real economic sense, large variation in standard of living around the world is determined by differences in the productivity of workers across nations. For instance, due to productivity, some East Asian countries such as Singapore, South Korea, and Taiwan have had their per capita income increasing about 7% per annum in recent decades. At this rate, per capita income doubles about every 10 years. These countries have, in the length of one generation, gone from being among the poorest in the world to among the richest. In contrast, in some African countries, for many years, in contrast, in some African countries, such as Chad, Ethiopia, and Nigeria, per capita income has been stagnant for many years. On this basis, Mankey and Taylor 2011 argue that productivity rather than trade is the driver of real growth. The authors add that in nations where workers can produce a large quantity of goods and services per unit of time, most people enjoy a high standard of living. And in nations where workers are less productive, most people must endure a mere meager existence. Thus, the growth rate of nations' productivity determines the growth rate of its average income. Labor relation perspective on productivity and wage determination. The center of attention in labor relations is the term and condition of employment negotiated between management and union officials. In the context of normal labor relations, Wage fixing process take productivity issue as one of the key factors. In the context of Nigeria, labor relation process is found to be bedeviled with bad faith bargaining strategy at both the management and union levels. Bad faith bargaining occur by show of disrespect for labor relation process in the area of adjustment to stand on issues. For instance, in the private sector, the employer's position of power in most cases does not permit workers' union to express their opinion or leave the union very weak and condition labor process to a take it or leave it for workers. In most private sector-based industries, right to unionism for workers is weak. More specifically, sectors such as banking, manufacturing, education, health, and trading under private sector are generally less unionized in Nigeria. Use of contract staff has become a pervasive practice. Workers' voice is silenced, and with the harsh economic condition, workers are left to take what they can get in the private sector. In essence, industrial relation within the contemporary economic environment in the private sector is more of industrial suppression and exploitation. Generally, proper bargaining coordination reduces strike activity. However, in the public sector in Nigeria, government agents demonstrate lack of competence to engage trade unions and mold their activities and action for the economic's progress. The electric taxes of unreasonable procrastination in executing agreement is common. Instead of engaging the union and confronting the challenges in question objectively, most agents of government are preoccupied with how to bribe union leaders or forcefully cage them in an attempt to buy time to complete their tenure of office. Labor agreements with each union and professional union body are conducted without proper consideration of the implication for other similar unions within and across other sectors. The wide practice of this isolated bargaining with unions has created complicated and violent inter-union rivalry connected with payment parity in many institutions within the public sector. At the trade union's hand in the public sector, the growth of union over the years and the strength of membership has empowered the unions, especially in the use of force of strike with pay, to secure a kind of edge in labor relations. With regard to the unions, a very controversial and unresolved issue is the disregard for bargaining territory or jurisdiction or coverage. For instance, every union agreement with the federal government on workers' benefits is often adopted for blind application to other sectors, tiers of government, and agencies. This practice is a form of bad faith bargaining struggle in labor relations. The implication is that with negotiated salary, it is doubtful if wage determination or fixing will adequately reflect the productivity of workers. In most cases, such wages will only reflect the bargaining strength of the workers' union vis-a-vis the employers. Academic research contributions. Over the years, I have undertaken studies to investigate empirically some of the foregoing issues. The published works are in 6 categories, bordering on human capital development, the functioning of the labor market, the issue of industrial relations and wage adjustment in Nigeria, and unemployment. Others that appear to define the labor issue in contemporary Nigeria are governance and corruption in the public sector and issues of health, human capital accumulation. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, permit me to provide a panoramic view of my contribution in these areas, especially as it pertains to the development in the country's labor market. But first, a look at the supply of skilled manpower to the market through the process of human capital development. human capital development, and the labor market. A positive investment climate enhances human capital development as it attracts new firms and encourages adoption of new technology by the existing firm, and thus raises return to investment on education. The link between education and manpower productivity and growth that holds for both developing and developed countries can, however, break down under extreme circumstances. Many African countries, particularly Nigeria, have experienced deteriorating labor market conditions and poor growth performance, even as there have been rapid increase in investment and output in education. That is, despite the national investment in education, unemployment problems seem to be on the increase and becoming complicated. Adebayo and Olomola 2008 analyzed the link between education, human capital development, and labor market conditions in Nigeria. The study investigates whether Nigeria's educational system and strategy are a factor responsible for the inability to meet human resource needs and consequently high unemployment in the labor market. As regards quality, the curriculum and the competence of the teachers, as well as the quality of the admitted students and learning environment, are very important determinants of teaching learning outcome. On quantity issue, Nigeria has witnessed high proliferation of educational institutions at both private and public sector levels. The expansion of universities in terms of number of institutions and enrollments or turnout directly increased the supply of educated manpower above the demand for them, with educated unemployment implication. Thus, in the context of the effect of education and human capital development strategy, the labor market condition deteriorates whenever the supply of labor exceeds the demand at the prevailing wage rate. In Nigeria, the nature of educational system has been implicated on some grounds for the deplorable labor market condition. According to Adebayo 1999b, this is explained by rapid expansion of Nigeria's educational system in terms of explosive increase in the number of different categories of educational institutions, enrollment and turnout of graduates of different categories in the labor market from public and private-owned educational institutions. The implication of this for unemployment challenge in the labor market cannot be overemphasized. In essence, the contemporary labor market signal in Nigeria do not support a breakdown of the connection between education and unemployment. A further study by Adebayo 2000 examined the effectiveness of the linkage between the world of learning and the world of work. This was done by conducting an analysis of the labor market experience of Nigerian tertiary graduate job seekers. The data for the study were obtained through a survey of 2,411 tertiary graduate job seekers who applied for the post of management trainee with the default Dunlop Nigerian PLC Lagos. Dunlop Nigerian PLC had put up a vacancy advertisement for the position in the Guardian of October 21st, 1997. According to the advertisement, the following conditions were to be satisfied before applying: at least 5 credit passes, including English language and mathematics, at the secondary school certificate at one sitting. Minimum of second-class upper division from a recognized university, or upper credit in higher national diploma from recognized polytechnic or college of technology. Not more than 28 years old, and must have completed or have been exempted from the mandatory 1-year NYSC scheme. At the end of the 2 weeks from the date of the publication, over 5,000 graduates applied for the job for which only 7 management trainees were required. Out of the 5,000 applicants, we were able to pick 2,411 applications of tertiary graduates. The main findings of this study, among others, are the general waiting period across all disciplines was between 1 and 2 years before securing first job. Virtually, the labor market condition affected the graduates in the same way, irrespective of their courses of study. The problem is a reflection of general decline in the labor absorptive capacity of the economy. which is not unconnected with government's contractionary economic policies. The increasing average waiting period of 1 to 2 years for this class of graduates before the possibility of jobs, irrespective of discipline and the state of origin, shows that the kind of training received by the Nigerian graduates from the universities cannot be responsible for their plight. In the words of Oladeji 2014, they were educated, qualified, but jobless. Thus, first, it is an issue of Nigeria's economy's stagnation. Second, it is the lack of entrepreneurial ability which could have catalyzed them into self-employment. Nevertheless, this cannot totally explain the vast problem of graduate unemployment. One may ask, how friendly is the harsh economic environment to the small and medium-scale enterprises which could possibly have absorbed them in the absence of paid employment? Or, in the alternative, what is the absorptive capacity of the economy for the entrepreneurial skill often canvassed by the government? It is my contention that the issue of tertiary graduate unemployment is a vast and complicated problem. On the supply side, the fact is that when population increases over a long time against declining labor absorptive capacity in an economy, unemployment will inevitably be the outcome. For clearer understanding of economic stagnation, Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, the study I have reported was published 17 years ago. Between that time and today, 65% of the manufacturing enterprises where I conducted my PhD survey then have gone under. Among the affected enterprises were Kaduna Textile, Arewa Textile, Finetex, United Nigerian Textile. Also in the rubber industry, Dunlop Nigeria folded up, while Michelin moved out of Nigeria due to harsh operating environment. These were enterprises with production factory that house big community of thousands of workers in the Nigerian economy in their boom days. Other enterprises in this group that are in existence have become traders in imported materials in Nigeria. In essence, the lack of competitiveness of the product of these enterprises was mainly due to high cost of doing business connected with high infrastructural deficiency, economic policy inconsistency, corruption of public agents and agencies who make business environment difficult and costly for enterprise operation. The clarion call for entrepreneurship among graduates in this kind of economy may be somehow relevant, but cannot be the only solution. There are mutually reinforcing factors and processes that must be addressed for direction on the challenge. The labor market condition in Nigeria. On the labor market condition in Nigeria, Adebayo 1998 argues that efficiently functioning labor market is important to human resource development, utilization, and economic growth. The labor market allocates labor among alternative productive activities and is a major force shaping income distribution. The impediment to efficient functioning labor market operation are multifaceted, and they include structural and institutional constraints. The salient institutional constraints that constitute impediment to the proper functioning of the country's labor market, in the neoclassical sense, are trade unions and government policies. These come in form of legislated conditions of work, bargaining process in some sector and state, and minimum wage legislation. Besides, there are social and political constraints on location or type of work permitted for various groups of citizens within the nation. All these exemplify a malfunctioning or distorted labor market system in a neoclassical sense. Based on the foregoing, Adebayo 1998 attempts to verify the extent of labor market flexibility in Nigeria. Labor turnover and other related rates, such as quit and accessions, were analyzed using some selected manufacturing establishments in Nigeria. Examination of quit rates of the turnover trend showed a generally high involuntary quit rate as a manifestation of the harsh economic climate on the operation of manufacturing firms. The low voluntary quit rate observed is considered a result of the shrinking opportunity for alternative employment within the economy. Also, the accession rate across the sampled firms were generally low, indicating poor human resource absorption. Thus, from the foregoing, one can see that there was low labor mobility in spite of the economic reform programs. This is seen more or less as a case of labor stability illusion, manifesting a stable contractual employment arrangement not based on workers' satisfaction. Investigating into the factors responsible show it is a problem of labor market distress consequent on the harsh economic environment. The findings on the long job tenure as opposed to a short one, and the observed weak influence of wages on job tenure invalidated the condition for the fulfillment of the labor flexibility thesis. The cumulative evidence in the study did not suggest any serious drive towards labor market flexibility or the adoption of neoclassical remedy for the country's employment problem. Additional evidence from Adebayo 2001 on the factors of labor mobility shows that mobility of labor was restricted geographically along regional lines. The geographical restriction points to the existence of some form of barrier inhibiting proper integration of the country's labor markets. This implies that fundamental labor market reform, such that the labor market is made to function according to neoclassical theory, may not be feasible. Arising from all this is the imperative for labor market reform towards enhancing its flexibility and proper integration. In the alternative, there may be need for deliberate government intervention with a view to supplanting the operation of the market forces to capitalize on labor relation and wage determination. The determination and adjustment of wages and salaries are critical labor policy issues with strong implication for productivity and industrial peace. On this issue in Nigeria, a paper titled "Resolving the Wage Crisis in Nigeria" was published by me in 1999 with a view to influencing policy decisions as the nation was transiting from military rule to democratic system. The study indicates that the practice in Nigeria has been occasional fixing of the minimum wage at federal government's discretion through wage commission. In most cases, review of wages were never considered paramount until it degenerated into a situation that constitutes threat to economic progress of the country. By this, the federal government acts as principal regulatory agency on wage issue in Nigeria. The paper observed that the rate of increase and frequency of adjustment of wages remained unresolved at the three levels of government in Nigeria. On this, the case of wage adjustment can be described as one of wage price spiral to date. This is a vicious cycle in which higher consumer prices cause workers to demand for higher wages, which in turn cause producer and importer to raise prices and worsen inflationary forces. In this case, more money in terms of wage without productivity only generates the mistaken feeling that employment objective in many developing countries, especially Nigeria, has been quite challenging. It is challenging because a number of ambitious economic restructuring programs and policies have been attempted without much success. Also, a number of economic programs have been implemented from one government told the order over the years to promote human and natural resource development, generate employment, and alleviate poverty. This is apart from those who are in prison in various countries like Libya, Egypt, and other North African countries. According to Adebayo 1999A, attempt to explain the factors of Nigerian unemployment and poverty problem are pointed to population issue. On this, China population of 1.3 billion is equivalent of 18.47% of the total world population, and yet the unemployment rate is 4.04%. India, with population of 1.2 billion, has unemployment rate of 5%. Insight on issues of demographic dividend has also established that population can be a blessing rather than a curse if good policy implementation drives inclusive economic growth. Also, rapid expansion of Nigerian educational system and the explosive increase in turnout of educated labor into the economy has been implicated for unemployment problem. However, it should be noted that adequate investment in education is a plus, and we could not have preferred not to educate the youthful population. It may be important to ask that if the Nigerian economy had been well managed, policies well implemented to drive growth with adequate infrastructural facility to support the private sector business initiative, wouldn't the story have been different? On this, Preacher 2000 observed that the waste of investment spending through corruption may itself be an important reason most poor countries are poor and their unemployment pervasive. On governance, corruption, and the labor market, the imperfection in governance occasioned by the widespread and large-scale corruption at the corporate and national level have undoubtedly remained a strong obstacle to proper functioning of the labor market, economic growth, and sustainable development in many developing countries. Thus, issue of governance and corruption to a large extent defines also the happening in the labor market. They provide the challenging environment within which the country's labor market has been operating. On this, the Transparency International has worked with the government of Nigeria to devise ways of tackling corruption in public procurement. The efforts produce a number of specifications of terms for contract procurement, which eventually led to the establishment of Bureau of Public Procurement by the Procurement Act of 2007. Also, in some states where the European Union Support for Reforming Institutions program was successfully implemented, State Bureau of Procurement have been midwifed into existence. The effort is important because in the history of corruption in Nigeria, contract procurement has indisputably been a key source of resource drainage through over-invoicing, inflation of contract costs, and cautious packaging of projects designed for resource fraud into annual budget at different levels of government. Therefore, Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, Adebayo and Arawoma 2008 found that a lot of progress has been made in terms of formulation of clear rules, establishment of anti-corruption agency, and to create favorable environment for public service delivery. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, despite the existence of these agencies since 2007 and the great noise around fight against corruption under the current administration, little progress has been made in control of corruption. Public investigation within the last 2 years indicates the involvement of high-profile public officers in incredible large-scale corruption in Nigeria. More worrisome is the alleged involvement of judges and lawyers in the practice. Little wonder that from the international perspective, Corruption Perception Index of 2015 indicate that Nigeria had 26 out of 100 score and ranked number 136 out of 165 nations listed. The corruption condition and the revelation from the public investigation indicate interferences in the functioning of the agencies by political leaders at the federal and state levels in Nigeria. It is also important to note that foul play is suspected in cases of some serving officers to whom the agencies close their eyes when they have questions to answer. In essence, corrupt practices in procurement in Nigeria is so systemic that the country's story may remain the same if turn determined by the economic condition of production of goods and services. The ensuing pressure or social demand for higher education in Nigeria, coupled with its political economy implications, has made infeasible any sharp cut in enrollment to align with the declining need for labor in the economy. Number three, a fundamental labor market reform so that the labor market is made to function according to neoclassical theory does not appear feasible in Nigeria. The alternative is to call for some deliberate government intervention. Number four, the government, private employer, and trade union play critical roles in the wage determination. It is noted that in practice, the fixing of minimum wage has always been subject to either the whims and crises of government, the power of the unions, or both. This situation tends to push wage